Darlington Raceway, September 3, 1951. The Southern 500, Herb Thomas grips the steering wheel of his number 92 Hudson Hornet as the green flag drops. Behind him, 81 other cars, the largest field in NASCAR history, roar to life. V8, powered Oldsmobiles, Chryslers, and Fords fill the grid. The crowd expects a traditional V8 victory. They expect the six-cylinder Hudson to fade by lap 50. 364 laps later, Thomas wins the race. The victory margin defied belief. Thomas finished so far ahead that he had lapped the entire field. Every other car in the race was running at least one full lap behind the Hudson Hornet when Thomas took the checkered flag. The V8s trail behind like wounded animals, lapped and limping, their drivers shaking their heads in disbelief. The sound echoing across South Carolina isn't just victory, it's revolution. The deep rhythmic growl of Hudson's 308 inline-six has just rewritten the rules of American racing. This is the untold story of the straight-six engine that obliterated V8 supremacy in NASCAR's golden dawn. The Hudson 308 inline-six that crushed America's most powerful racing engines and left an entire industry scrambling for answers. The year 1952 painted America in Technicolor optimism. World War II shadows were lifting, and prosperity hummed through factory towns and suburban neighborhoods. On weekends, families piled into their automobiles, Buicks with porthole fenders, Cadillacs with chrome grins, Chevrolets with their dependable six-cylinders, and headed to the races. NASCAR was still raw, still real. These weren't the sanitized speedways of decades to come. These were dirt ovals carved from southern farmland, where the smell of red clay mixed with high-octane gasoline and the sweet scent of tobacco from the grandstands. Spectators paid 75 cents for general admission, $2 for reserved seats. They came in their Sunday best. Men in pressed shirts and fedoras, women in floral dresses and white gloves, children clutching bottles of Coca-Cola purchased for a nickel. The track announcers called the action through tinny PA systems, their voices crackling over the thunder of engines. Ladies and gentlemen, coming down the back straight, it's that Hudson Hornet again. The crowds had learned to recognize the sound. While the V8s screamed and snarled, the Hudson's inline-six produced something different, a steady, purposeful rumble that seemed to say, "Step aside." In the infield, mechanics worked with basic tools and endless ingenuity. No telemetry, no computers, just grease-stained hands and intimate knowledge of how metal and fire could be coaxed into speed. The Hudson team occupied their section with quiet confidence, their cars sitting lower than the competition, sleeker somehow, like predators among prey. Between the white lines of small-town America, something extraordinary was happening. A car company from Detroit, not one of the big three, but the Hudson Motor Car Company, was dominating the nation's newest sport with an engine design that defied conventional wisdom. While Ford, Chevrolet, and Oldsmobile poured resources into V8 development, Hudson had doubled down on an inline-six. Not just any six-cylinder, but a 308 cubic inch monster that would prove horsepower wasn't just about the number of cylinders. The paddock conversations carried an undercurrent of confusion and grudging respect. Racing had always been about more cylinders, more displacement, more everything. Hudson's success suggested that perhaps more wasn't the complete answer. Perhaps engineering elegance could triumph over brute force. Perhaps a well-balanced inline-six could outrun the most powerful V8s of the day. As 1952 unfolded, race after race, track after track, the pattern repeated. Hudson Hornets would qualify well, run steady, and then unleash devastating late-race speed that left competitors scrambling for explanations. The drivers climbing from those low-slung Hornets weren't just winning races, they were challenging everything the automotive world thought it knew about performance. The hood lifts to reveal the mechanical beast that would terrorize NASCAR's V8 establishment. 308 cubic inches of cast-iron precision, arranged not in the fashionable V configuration that dominated American performance, but in a straight line that traced automotive engineering back to its fundamental origins. This was Hudson's 308 inline-six, and every specification challenged conventional wisdom about racing supremacy. The numbers told a story of engineering excellence. Bore measured 3.8125 inches, stroke extended to a lengthy 4.50 inches, creating displacement through depth rather than width. Where competitors pursued short-stroke, high-revving architectures, Hudson embraced the torque-producing characteristics of long-stroke design. The resulting engine measured nearly 4 feet in length, requiring specialized chassis accommodation that would prove crucial to racing success. The L-head configuration appeared ancient to industry observers, obsessed with overhead valve advancement. Hudson's engineers understood that side valve design offered advantages that transcended theoretical performance comparisons. The combustion chamber shape, while less efficient than overhead valve alternatives, provided exceptional durability under racing stress. Valve train complexity was minimized, reducing failure points during extended competition where reliability mattered more than peak horsepower numbers. Standard compression ratio of 7.2:1 could be optioned down to 6.7:1 for owners requiring lower octane fuel compatibility, but racing applications demanded maximum compression for competitive power output. The high chromium alloy block featured enhanced cooling passages and reinforced main bearing supports designed to withstand sustained high revolutions per minute operation that destroyed lesser engines during NASCAR's demanding races. Power output reached 145 horsepower at 3,800 revolutions per minute, respectable but not overwhelming compared to contemporary V8 alternatives. The critical advantage lay in torque delivery that peaked at approximately 257 pound-feet, providing acceleration characteristics perfectly suited to NASCAR's varied track demands. Unlike V8 seconds that required precise revolutions per minute management for optimal performance, the Hudson's torque curve remained broad and accessible across practical racing ranges. The twin-H power system transformed the 308 from competent power plant into racing weapon. Introduced mid-1951 as a dealer option and standardized for 1952, the dual carburetor setup employed 2 Carter 1-barrel units with larger venturi diameters than single carburetor alternatives. The H designation referenced the intake manifold shape that distributed fuel mixture evenly across all 6 cylinders, eliminating the uneven distribution that plagues some contemporary multi-carburetor installations. Each carburetor fed 3 cylinders through carefully calculated runner lengths that optimized breathing characteristics across the engine's operating range. The system wasn't simply doubled carburation, but engineered integration that enhanced volumetric efficiency while maintaining fuel economy during normal driving conditions. Racing applications could exploit the system's full potential, providing airflow capacity that supported power outputs approaching 200 horsepower with proper tuning. The 7X racing package elevated twin H-power effectiveness through specialized components unavailable to civilian purchasers. Modified intake manifolds featured improved port matching and enhanced fuel distribution characteristics. Exhaust systems employed dual outlets with carefully tuned header links that enhanced scavenging effects crucial for high revolutions per minute breathing. These modifications represented factory-sanctioned performance upgrades that maintained reliability while unleashing devastating competitive potential. Beneath the engine lay Hudson's revolutionary step-down chassis design, the foundation that transformed adequate power into racing dominance. Traditional automotive construction placed passengers on top of frame rails, creating high centers of gravity that compromised handling characteristics. Hudson's engineers dropped the passenger compartment between the frame rails, lowering the entire vehicle's center of gravity by several crucial inches. The step-down design required complete rethinking of automotive construction methodology. Frame rails extended higher than conventional designs, creating a recessed floor pan that accommodated passengers within the structural envelope rather than above it. This approach demanded sophisticated engineering to maintain structural rigidity while achieving the dimensional advantages crucial for racing performance. Ground clearance suffered compared to conventional designs, limiting the step-down chassis to improved road surfaces, but racing applications benefited enormously from the handling characteristics enabled by lower center of gravity positioning. NASCAR's paved and semi-improved tracks provided ideal venues for exploiting Hudson's chassis advantages while minimizing ground clearance disadvantages. Weight distribution achieved near-perfect balance through careful component positioning enabled by the step-down architecture. The long inline-six engine could be positioned lower and further back than V8 alternatives, creating front-to-rear balance that enhanced cornering capabilities. Racing drivers immediately recognized the handling superiority that allowed higher cornering speeds and more precise vehicle control during competitive conditions. The inline-six configuration offered inherent balance advantages that V8 designs could not match without sophisticated engineering solutions unavailable in the early 1950s. Primary forces from pistons moving up and down cancel naturally in the straight six arrangement, while secondary forces from connecting rod angularity also balanced perfectly. This mechanical harmony eliminated vibrations that plagued contemporary V8 engines, allowing sustained high revolutions per minute operation without internal stress accumulation. Crankshaft design reflected Hudson's commitment to mechanical precision. The 7-main bearing crankshaft provided exceptional rigidity compared to 5-bearing alternatives common in competitive engines. Each bearing surface received careful attention to dimensional tolerances and surface finish quality that enabled reliable high revolutions per minute operation during extended racing conditions. The balanced rotating assembly included counterweights calculated to eliminate harmful vibrations while maintaining minimum rotating mass for improved acceleration response. Hudson's engineers understood that racing success required engines capable of sustained operation at revolutions per minute levels that destroyed inadequately balanced power plants. Every rotating and reciprocating component received engineering attention that transformed good engines into great ones. Cooling system capacity exceeded requirements for normal driving conditions, providing thermal management crucial for racing applications where sustained high power output generated extreme heat loads. The radiator featured increased core thickness and enhanced airflow characteristics that maintained optimal operating temperatures during competitive conditions where cooling system failure meant retirement from competition. Oil circulation employed a full-pressure system with enhanced flow characteristics that maintained lubrication under racing stress. The oil pump featured increased capacity and pressure relief settings that protected engine components during high revolutions per minute operation. Racing applications demanded lubrication systems capable of sustaining film strength under loads that far exceeded normal driving requirements. The transmission mounted behind the engine featured synchronized shifting and gear ratios optimized for racing applications where quick acceleration and sustained high-speed capability mattered more than fuel economy. Considerations. Hudson's engineers understood that drivetrain integration affected overall performance as significantly as engine specifications alone. Manufacturing quality exceeded industry standards through Hudson's commitment to precision that treated every engine as a potential racing power plant. Cylinder, boring, deck machining, and bearing fit tolerances maintained specifications that ensured consistent performance across production runs. This attention to manufacturing detail provided reliability advantages that proved crucial during NASCAR's demanding competition schedule. The Hudson Motor Car Company emerged from Detroit's automotive gold rush with audacity that bordered on arrogance. February 20, 1909, 8 businessmen gathered to birth an automaker that would dare challenge the established order. Joseph L. Hudson, the department store titan, provided the capital and the name, though he harbored reservations about entering the brutal automotive marketplace. What happened next defied every prediction. Hudson sold 4,508 automobiles in their inaugural year, the highest first-year sales in automotive history to that point. The company's founders, Roy Chapin and Howard Coffin, brought pedigree from Olds Motor Works and vision that transcended conventional thinking. Where others saw transportation, Hudson envisioned engineering excellence. Their 4-cylinder models carved immediate respect from an industry that expected newcomers to fail within months. Within 12 months of incorporation, Hudson had become the 11th largest automaker in the United States. Success bred ambition. Through the 1920s and 1930s, Hudson established itself as an innovator sanctuary. Their Essex line, introduced in 1919, democratized performance for middle-class buyers. But innovation carried risks. While Ford perfected mass production and General Motors mastered market segmentation, Hudson pursued engineering solutions that prioritized performance over profit margins. This philosophy would prove both blessing and curse. The company's revolutionary moment arrived in 1948 with the introduction of the step-down design. Hudson's step-down construction placed passengers inside the frame rails rather than on top of them, creating a lower center of gravity and superior handling characteristics that would become crucial to racing success. The design represented Hudson's commitment to engineering fundamentals over superficial styling changes, a philosophy that would reach its apex in the 308 engine. Hudson's inline-six heritage traced back to the company's earliest days, but the engine that would dominate NASCAR emerged from wartime innovation and post-war ambition. In 1951, Hudson released the wide-block Big Six series, culminating in the 308 cubic-inch power plant specifically engineered for the new Hornet model. The 308 featured improved cylinder head water passages and a redesigned crankcase to accommodate the longer stroke crankshaft. The 308 specification sheet read like a manifesto of unconventional engineering. Bore measured 3.8125 inches, stroke extended to 4.50 inches, creating 308 cubic inches of displacement from 6 cylinders arranged in perfect linear harmony. The L-head design, dismissed by competitors as outdated, featured a high chromium alloy block and premium engineering throughout, thoroughly over-engineered in the Hudson tradition. Standard compression ratio of 7.2:1 could be optioned down to 6.7:1 for lower octane fuel compatibility, while horsepower peaked at 145 at 3,800 revolutions per minute, with torque delivering approximately 257 pound-feet. But raw specifications told only half the story. Hudson's engineers understood that racing demanded more than laboratory numbers. The twin H-Power system, introduced in mid-1951 as a dealer option and standardized for 1952, employed dual Carter one-barrel carburetors with greater throat area and improved fuel distribution. The system didn't just add power, it transformed the engine's breathing characteristics, allowing the long-stroke inline-six to gulp air and fuel with efficiency that surprised even Hudson's engineers. The 7X racing package put the 308 into a whole different league altogether. Available through select dealers and racing specialists, the 7X modifications pushed output beyond 200 horsepower through carefully calibrated intake and exhaust improvements, specialized manifolding, and dual exhaust systems. These weren't backyard modifications, they represented factory-sanctioned performance upgrades that maintained reliability while unleashing devastating power. Hudson's decision to pursue inline-six supremacy while competitors embraced V8 architecture reflected deeper strategic thinking. The inline-six offered inherent balance advantages. Primary and secondary forces canceled naturally, eliminating vibrations that plagued early V8 designs. The long stroke delivered torque characteristics ideal for racing's demanding acceleration patterns. Most importantly, the inline configuration allowed for a lower hood line and center of gravity that complemented the step-down chassis design perfectly. Manufacturing economics also favored the inline-six. Single cylinder heads, simplified valve trains, and fewer precision components reduced production costs compared to V8 alternatives. This efficiency allowed Hudson to invest engineering resources in refinement rather than complexity. Every dollar not spent on additional cylinders could be directed toward metallurgy, balancing, and precision machining that transformed good engines into great ones. The balanced crankshaft represented Hudson's commitment to mechanical harmony. While competitors accepted the vibrations inherent in their designs, Hudson engineers obsessed over every rotating and reciprocating component. The result was an engine that could sustain high revolutions per minute without the internal stress that destroyed racing engines during extended competition. Durability became Hudson's secret weapon, an engine that could run at racing speeds for hours without catastrophic failure. Critics dismissed Hudson's inline-six as antiquated, thinking in the dawning age of V8 supremacy. Popular mechanics magazines championed the theoretical advantages of 8 cylinders, more power strokes per revolution, better high revolutions per minute breathing, and the psychological appeal of more in an era that worshipped excess. Hudson's engineers responded not with words, but with dyno sheets and track times that challenged every assumption about modern engine design. The automotive press struggled to categorize Hudson's approach. Here was a company, smaller than the Big Three, pursuing engineering solutions that directly contradicted industry trends. While Ford refined their flathead V8 and Oldsmobile promoted their overhead valve rocket engines, Hudson doubled down on L-head inline-six architecture that traced its lineage to the industry's earliest days. The gamble appeared either brilliant or suicidal, but time would provide the verdict. By 1951, Hudson's 308 inline-six stood ready to challenge V8 supremacy on America's newest racing stage. NASCAR provided the perfect proving ground, a sport where engineering excellence faced real-world testing under conditions that separated genuine innovation from marketing hyperbole. The stage was set for a confrontation that would rewrite fundamental assumptions about American performance. Detroit's power brokers had already declared victory before Hudson fired a single competitive shot. The Oldsmobile Rocket 88 ruled NASCAR tracks with mathematical precision, 303 cubic inches of overhead valve sophistication, producing 135 horsepower through revolutionary combustion chamber design. The lightweight 88 coupe had become synonymous with racing success, its modern architecture representing everything the automotive establishment believed about performance evolution. General Motors marketed the Rocket 88 as an automotive destiny incarnate. Advertisements proclaimed future-matic performance that relegated older designs to historical footnotes. The overhead valve V8 delivered power through advanced metallurgy and precision engineering that promised reliability matching its impressive output. Racing victories validated these claims, establishing Oldsmobile as the benchmark against which all competitors measured themselves. The Rocket's short-stroke design philosophy reflected industry consensus about modern performance requirements. High revving capability enabled sustained power output at racing revolutions per minute where older engines faltered. The compact V8 configuration provided installation flexibility that enhanced chassis design possibilities. Every engineering decision reinforced the message that 8 cylinders arranged in V formation represented automotive sophistication. Ford's flathead V8 commanded respect through sheer longevity and proven battlefield reliability. Since 1932, the flathead had powered everything from family sedans to bootlegger specials, earning devotion through consistent performance rather than spectacular power claims. The engine's simplicity enabled extensive modification by independent mechanics who understood every casting detail and weak point. Racing applications had transformed the flathead into folk legend among speed enthusiasts. Midget racers swore by Ford V8 reliability during extended competition where engine failures ended promising races. The aftermarket support network provided modification components unavailable for competing power plants, creating performance potential limited only by builder imagination and budget constraints. Henry Ford's masterpiece remained fundamentally sound despite its advancing age. The side valve configuration delivered torque characteristics ideal for racing acceleration demands. Manufacturing tolerances had improved dramatically since initial introduction, creating modern flathead engines significantly superior to their Depression-era ancestors. Chevrolet's inline-six dominated their passenger car lineup, while company executives planned V8 revolution for the near future. The Stovebolt 6 had earned respect for reliability and fuel economy, but racing applications revealed power limitations that frustrated competitive teams. Chevrolet's racing efforts relied primarily on modified 6-cylinder engines that struggled against V8 opposition. Behind closed doors, Chevrolet engineers developed revolutionary V8 architecture that would debut in 1955 as the legendary small block. Early prototypes suggested performance potential that would reshape American automotive preferences permanently. The lightweight, compact design promised power-to-weight advantages that would make existing competitors obsolete overnight. Plymouth's inline-six engines provided respectable performance for budget-conscious racers but lacked the sophistication required for sustained competitive success. Chrysler Corporation's advanced Hemi V8 development remained years away from widespread racing implementation. Independent manufacturers like Studebaker offered V8 alternatives but commanded limited market presence compared to Detroit's Big Three. The competitive landscape reflected broader cultural assumptions about technological advancement and American industrial superiority. V8 engines symbolized progress, sophistication, and engineering advancement that matched the nation's post-war optimism. Multiple cylinders suggested abundance and prosperity that resonated with consumers, eager to demonstrate their success through automotive choices. Industry publications reinforced these perceptions through technical coverage that emphasized V8 advantages while dismissing alternative approaches as outdated thinking. Engineering journals featured articles exploring overhead valve benefits and multi-cylinder breathing characteristics. Automotive magazines celebrated V8 performance through road tests and racing coverage that positioned 8-cylinder engines as inevitable evolutionary developments. Consumer preferences increasingly favored V8 options across all market segments where availability permitted. Insurance companies offered lower rates for multi-cylinder engines, reflecting statistical evidence of superior reliability and resale values. Dealership salesmen learned to emphasize V8 advantages when discussing performance expectations with potential buyers. Racing team owners calculated competitive advantages that seemed to favor V8 machinery across multiple performance categories. Power-to-weight ratios favored 8-cylinder designs when properly developed. Breathing characteristics enabled higher revolutions per minute operation, crucial for sustained racing speeds. Parts availability provided modification options that expanded performance potential beyond factory specifications. The mathematical superiority appeared overwhelming when analyzed through conventional engineering wisdom. More cylinders meant more power strokes per crankshaft revolution. Shorter strokes enabled higher revolutions per minute operation with reduced piston speeds. Overhead valve architecture improved breathing efficiency compared to side valve alternatives. Every calculation reinforced V8 dominance assumptions. Professional mechanics expressed confidence that V8 engines represented racing's inevitable future. Shop conversations focused on optimizing 8-cylinder performance rather than questioning fundamental assumptions about cylinder configuration advantages. Technical expertise concentrated on extracting maximum potential from V8 designs while dismissing alternatives as curiosities from automotive history. Hudson faced not merely technical competition, but cultural momentum that positioned their engineering philosophy as backward-looking stubbornness. The inline-six approach appeared to represent conservative thinking in an era demanding revolutionary advancement. Success would require proving that fundamental assumptions about V8 superiority contained critical flaws that careful analysis could expose and exploit. The smell hit first. Hot brake linings mixed with burning oil and high-octane gasoline, creating an intoxicating cocktail of speed and danger that defined NASCAR's pit zones. Hudson's crew huddled around their low-slung Hornet like surgeons preparing for emergency surgery, every tool positioned with military precision. 30 seconds. That's all the time separating victory from mechanical failure when temperatures climb beyond survival limits. The crew chief's eyes never left the gauges. Oil pressure, water temperature, fuel level, numbers that determined whether Hudson's inline-six would complete another racing stint or surrender to V8 competition waiting to capitalize on mechanical weakness. The clatter of impact wrenches echoed across the pit lane like mechanical gunfire. Hudson's advantage wasn't just horsepower or handling, it was systematic preparation that treated every pit stop as tactical warfare. While competitor crews fumbled with standard procedures, Hudson's team executed choreographed precision that gained crucial seconds during the chaos of refueling and tire changes. Brake drums glowed cherry red after extended racing, radiating heat that warped the air around Hudson's wire wheels. The crew chief touched each drum with a wet rag, listening for the telltale sizzle that indicated thermal overload. Too hot meant brake fade that could end the race in turn 3. Perfect temperature meant Hudson's superior weight distribution was working exactly as engineering intended. The twin H-power carburetors demanded constant attention during competition. Fuel mixture adjustments separated winning from losing when track conditions changed or fuel loads shifted weight distribution. Hudson's crew carried precision screwdrivers and jet assortments that enabled real-time tuning, impossible with single carburetor systems that plagued competing engines. Oil consumption told the story of mechanical stress invisible to spectators. Hudson's crew measured every quart added, calculating wear rates that predicted engine life remaining. The inline-six's balanced design typically consumed less oil than V8 competitors, providing endurance advantages that accumulated into victory margins during extended races. Tire pressure adjustments reflected Hudson's chassis sophistication. The step-down design's lower center of gravity created unique loading patterns that required specialized knowledge for optimal performance. While competitor crews relied on standard pressure recommendations, Hudson's team adjusted each corner individually based on track banking, surface temperature, and fuel load calculations. The crew chief's notebook contained secrets worth more than prize money. Gear ratio selections for specific tracks. Carburetor jetting charts for different atmospheric conditions. Suspension adjustments that maximized Hudson's handling advantages while compensating for changing track surfaces as races progressed. Radio communication remained primitive, forcing pit crews to interpret driver signals through windshield gestures and driving behavior patterns. Hudson's drivers developed coded communications that conveyed mechanical problems without alerting competitors to potential weaknesses. A specific hand position indicated overheating. Modified racing lines suggested handling problems requiring immediate attention. Split-second decisions determined championship outcomes. When Herb Thomas signaled transmission problems during a 1952 race, Hudson's crew prepared replacement gear oil and adjusted clutch linkage during a single pit stop that kept the Hornet competitive. Competitor teams often required multiple stops to diagnose similar problems, losing laps that proved insurmountable. The psychological warfare extended beyond mechanical preparation. Hudson's crew projected confidence that intimidated competitors struggling with more complex V8 systems. When Oldsmobile crews wrestled with overheating problems or Ford teams diagnosed ignition failures, Hudson's systematic approach suggested superior engineering that demoralized opposition efforts. Fuel strategies separated amateur teams from championship contenders. Hudson's fuel economy advantages enabled strategic decisions impossible for thirstier V8 competitors. The crew chief calculated consumption rates that allowed extended racing stints, while competitors made additional fuel stops that cost precious track position. Tool organization reflected military precision learned from wartime aircraft maintenance. Every wrench had a designated position. Spare parts were arranged by probability of failure. Emergency procedures were rehearsed until muscle memory eliminated hesitation during crisis situations when seconds determined survival. The pit wall became command central, where Hudson's brain trust analyzed competitor weaknesses and adjusted strategy accordingly. When V8 engines showed signs of distress, irregular exhaust notes, excessive smoke, erratic lap times, Hudson's team prepared for late race challenges from desperate competitors making final pushes before mechanical failure. This wasn't just racing, this was systematic domination through superior preparation and tactical execution that transformed Hudson's engineering advantages into unstoppable competitive reality. The enemy occupied every starting grid across America by 1951. 8 cylinders arranged in perfect V formation, breathing through overhead valves, generating headlines that proclaimed the dawn of modern performance. The Oldsmobile Rocket 88 had rewritten racing's fundamental equations. The 303 cubic inch overhead valve V8, producing 135 horsepower, dominated NASCAR racing from 1949 to 1951. The lightweight 88 Coupe was the car to beat in NASCAR's early seasons, its modern short-stroke design representing everything the automotive world believed about the future of performance. Ford's flathead V8, though showing its age, still commanded respect through proven durability and widespread availability. The engine had become legendary among midget race car builders after World War II, its cast-iron reliability earning devotion from mechanics who understood its limitations but appreciated its predictability. In NASCAR competition, Ford entries leveraged decades of development knowledge, extracting remarkable performance from architecture that trace back to 1932. Chrysler's Firepower Hemi represented the technological summit of American V8 design. The hemispherical combustion chamber design evolved from World War II aircraft engine technology, creating breathing characteristics that promised devastating power potential. Though relatively new to NASCAR competition in 1951, the Hemi's theoretical advantages suggested it would soon dominate any racing series where unlimited development was permitted. These three power plants shared fundamental philosophical assumptions that had crystallized into industry orthodoxy. V8 configuration offered superior power-to-weight ratios through more frequent power pulses per revolution. 8 cylinders could breathe more efficiently than 6, particularly at high revolutions per minute where racing victories were won. Modern overhead valve designs extracted maximum power from each combustion event while maintaining acceptable reliability. The mathematics appeared irrefutable. Industry publications reinforced V8 supremacy through technical analysis that dismissed alternative approaches. Hot Rod magazine's July 1951 issue proclaimed, "The overhead valve V8 represents the logical evolution of American performance." Automotive engineers quoted compression ratios, valve flow coefficients, and thermal efficiency calculations that demonstrated mathematical superiority of 8-cylinder designs. Hudson's inline-six appeared outdated, a relic of engineering conservatism in an era demanding innovation. Public perception reflected professional consensus. Car buyers increasingly demanded V8 engines, associating 8 cylinders with modernity, sophistication, and social status. The Oldsmobile division's 88 models became popularly called Rocket 88s, celebrating their advanced power plant. Hudson faced not just technical competition, but cultural momentum that positioned their engineering choices as backward-looking stubbornness. NASCAR's emerging popularity amplified these pressures. Racing success translated directly into showroom credibility, forcing manufacturers to demonstrate performance superiority through weekend competition. Oldsmobile's early NASCAR dominance validated their overhead valve V8 strategy while generating publicity that supported dealership sales. Ford and Chrysler recognized that racing victories represented marketing opportunities worth millions in advertising equivalent. Hudson understood the stakes but faced skepticism that their engineering philosophy could compete against superior numbers. The mathematical disadvantage appeared overwhelming. Hudson's 308 inline-six produced 145 horsepower from 6 cylinders, while Oldsmobile's 303 V8 generated 135 horsepower from 8. Simple arithmetic suggested Hudson held a modest power advantage, but industry experts dismissed raw horsepower comparisons as incomplete analysis. V8 engines delivered power more smoothly, revved higher, more safely, and offered greater development potential for future improvements. Professional mechanics expressed private doubts about Hudson's racing prospects. Shop conversations revolved around fundamental engineering realities that seemed to favor multi-cylinder designs. 8-cylinder engines produced power strokes every 90 degrees of crankshaft rotation compared to 120 degrees for 6-cylinder design. This frequency advantage translated into smoother power delivery and reduced crankshaft stress at racing revolutions per minute. The inline-six's longer crankshaft created potential flex problems that could destroy engines during extended high revolutions per minute operation. Racing team managers calculated weight distribution challenges that appeared to favor V8 designs. The compact dimensions of V-configuration engines allowed better chassis balance, crucial for handling performance on NASCAR's demanding tracks. Hudson's long inline-six created nose-heavy weight distribution that could compromise cornering capabilities, potentially negating any power advantages through inferior lap times. The step-down chassis design helped address these concerns, but skeptics questioned whether clever engineering could overcome fundamental physics. Parts availability considerations reinforced V8 advantages. Ford's flathead components flooded aftermarket suppliers, providing racing teams with extensive modification options and replacement part accessibility. Oldsmobile and Chrysler parts networks expanded rapidly to support their growing racing involvement. Hudson's smaller production volumes, limited component availability, and increased costs for racing teams operating on restricted budgets. Financial realities compounded Hudson's competitive challenges. General Motors and Ford commanded resources that dwarfed Hudson's engineering budgets. Chrysler Corporation's diversified industrial base supported extensive research and development programs. Hudson faced pressure to achieve racing success while operating with financial constraints that limited experimental programs and factory racing support. The company needed immediate results to justify continued competition against opponents who could absorb years of development costs. Media coverage reflected industry bias toward V8 advancement. Racing reporters focused on overhead valve technology, compression ratio improvements, and carburetor innovations that favored multi-cylinder engines. Hudson's twin H-Power system received acknowledgement, but not the enthusiastic coverage devoted to Oldsmobile's rocket engine publicity campaigns. Automotive journalists approached Hudson's racing efforts with patronizing respect for engineering craftsmanship but skepticism about competitive viability. The cultural moment demanded revolutionary thinking rather than evolutionary refinement. America emerged from World War II with appetite for technological advancement that matched the nation's economic optimism. Jet aircraft, television broadcasting, and atomic energy represented paradigm shifts that captured public imagination. Hudson's inline-six engineering appeared incremental rather than transformational, failing to generate excitement among consumers seeking dramatic progress. Competition drivers expressed mixed reactions to Hudson's racing potential. The Hornet's low seating position and superior handling characteristics earned grudging appreciation from professionals who recognized driving advantages. However, conventional wisdom suggested that handling superiority could not overcome fundamental power disadvantages in NASCAR's high-speed competition. Most drivers expected Hudson entries to perform respectably, but not challenge for victories against properly developed V8 opposition. Hudson engineers faced internal pressure to justify their unconventional approach. Company executives demanded racing success to validate engineering investments and support marketing claims about performance superiority. The engineering team understood that failure to achieve competitive results would terminate factory racing support and potentially influence future product development directions. Success required proving that fundamental assumptions about V8 superiority contained flaws that careful analysis could exploit. The revolution began not with fanfare but with a desperate gambit in the winter of 1950. Marshal Teague drove unannounced to Hudson's Detroit headquarters, walked through the factory doors without an appointment, and made a proposal that would reshape American motorsport. By the end of that impromptu meeting, Hudson had committed to something unprecedented: the first factory-backed stock car racing team supported by a major Detroit automaker. Teague understood what others missed. The inline-six might lack cylinders, but it possessed qualities that mattered more than mathematical perfection: balance, reliability, and torque characteristics that could exploit weaknesses in V8 designs during extended competition. Hudson's engineers listened, calculated, and decided to gamble their reputation on theories that contradicted industry consensus. The 1951 NASCAR Grand National season opened with familiar patterns. Oldsmobile Rocket 88s dominated early races, their overhead valve V8 seconds delivering expected superiority. Herb Thomas started the season driving a Plymouth, achieving moderate success with one victory in an Oldsmobile, following conventional wisdom about competitive machinery. The Hudson Hornets ran respectably but attracted little attention from racing reporters focused on V8 battles. Mid-season brought the catalyst that changed everything. At Marshal Teague's suggestion, Herb Thomas switched to a Hudson Hornet. The decision appeared risky, abandoning proven machinery for an untested experiment in inline-six racing. Thomas climbed into the low-slung Hornet with uncertainty about its competitive potential against the V8 field that had dominated the season's early races. September 3, 1951, Darlington Raceway, the Southern 500. Thomas drove what became famously dubbed the fabulous Hudson Hornet to victory in the most prestigious race on the NASCAR calendar. But victory alone understated the dominance displayed that afternoon. 82 cars started the grueling 500-mile test. Only Thomas finished on the lead lap. The entire V8 field, every Oldsmobile, Ford, and Chrysler entry, fell behind the relentless pace of Hudson's inline-six. The victory shattered fundamental assumptions about modern racing performance. Here was definitive proof that engineering sophistication could triumph over cylinder count advantages. The Hudson hadn't just won, it had destroyed the competition through superior endurance, handling, and sustained high-speed capability that left V8 opponents struggling to explain their inadequacy. Racing observers struggled to process what they had witnessed. The mathematical advantages that favored V8 designs had proven irrelevant against real-world competition demands. Hudson's lower center of gravity, achieved through the step-down chassis design, provided handling superiority that allowed higher cornering speeds. The inline-six's balanced reciprocating components enabled sustained high revolutions per minute operation without the internal stress that destroyed V8 engines during extended racing. The 1952 season transformed sporadic success into systematic domination. Teague and his crew chief, Smokey Yunick, won 27 of 34 events in major stock car competition, including 7 NASCAR victories. The statistics defied belief. Hudson had achieved a 79.4% winning percentage against supposedly superior competition. Hornets driven by NASCAR aces Herb Thomas, Dick Rathman, Al Keller, Frank Mundy, and Tim Flock won 27 NASCAR races during the 1952 season. Tim Flock captured the 1952 NASCAR Grand National Championship driving Ted Chester's Hudson Hornet, logging 8 wins and 25 top 10 finishes in 33 starts. The championship validated Hudson's engineering choices while humiliating competitors who had invested heavily in V8 development. Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler faced the uncomfortable reality that their advanced power plants had been outperformed by an inline-six design they considered obsolete. The racing community reacted with mixture of admiration and disbelief. In total, the Hudson Hornet won 48 first-place finishes and came in second 23 times during 1952. These weren't statistical anomalies or fortunate circumstances. Hudson had achieved consistent, overwhelming superiority that forced fundamental reassessment of engine design priorities. In the AAA racing circuit, Teague drove a stock Hornet to 14 wins during the season, bringing the Hornet's total record to 40 wins in 48 events, representing an 83% winning percentage. The success transcended NASCAR competition, proving Hudson's inline-six superiority across multiple racing disciplines where different track characteristics and competition rules applied. Track attendance increased wherever Hudson Hornets appeared. Racing fans arrived expecting to witness the unusual spectacle of 6-cylinder engines dominating 8-cylinder competition. The psychological impact extended beyond racing results. Hudson had demonstrated that innovative engineering could overcome resource disadvantages, inspiring smaller manufacturers and independent teams to challenge established automotive hierarchies. Competitor responses revealed the depth of Hudson's achievement. Ford engineers began emergency development programs to address their flathead V8's endurance limitations. Oldsmobile increased racing budgets and accelerated overhead valve improvements. Chrysler accelerated Hemi development schedules, recognizing that their advanced design needed immediate competitive implementation. Hudson's success had forced the entire industry into reactive mode. Herb Thomas and Tim Flock posted 26 wins in 34 races during the 1952 racing year, bringing national attention to Hudson's engineering capabilities. Automotive publications that had dismissed Hudson's inline-six approach now devoted extensive coverage to analyzing the technical factors behind their racing dominance. Dealership showrooms experienced immediate impact. Racing success translated into consumer interest as buyers associated Hudson's track performance with superior engineering throughout their product line. The psychological effect transcended rational analysis. Hudson had proven that their engineering philosophy produced results when subjected to the most demanding performance tests available. The competitive implications extended beyond immediate racing results. Hudson had established principles that would influence automotive development for decades. Balance trumped raw power. Engineering integration mattered more than individual component superiority. Systematic development could overcome resource disadvantages when applied with sufficient sophistication and commitment. Teague left NASCAR during the 1952 season due to disputes with NASCAR's owner Bill France Sr., but not before establishing Hudson's racing legacy. His departure demonstrated that Hudson's success depended on engineering excellence rather than individual driving talent, as other drivers continued achieving victories with Hudson machinery. The 1952 season concluded with Hudson having accomplished something unprecedented in American motorsport. They had systematically dominated competition using technology that industry experts had dismissed as obsolete. The inline-six had proven that conventional wisdom about racing engine design contained fundamental flaws that careful analysis and superior execution could exploit. The mathematics of domination spoke with clinical precision. Between 1951 and 1955, Hudson Hornets captured 81 NASCAR race wins and multiple championships, rewriting the fundamental equations that governed American motorsport. These weren't marginal victories or fortunate circumstances. Hudson had achieved systematic superiority that forced the entire automotive industry to reconsider basic assumptions about performance engineering. The technical foundation of Hudson's success lay in engineering integration that competitors had overlooked in their pursuit of raw horsepower. The step-down chassis design placed passengers inside the frame rails rather than on top of them, creating a lower center of gravity than contemporary vehicles that provided superior handling characteristics crucial for racing. While V8 opponents focused on power output, Hudson had optimized the complete vehicle system for racing performance. The inline-six's inherent balance advantages became decisive factors during extended competition. Where V8 engines experienced vibration and stress that accumulated over racing distances, Hudson's 308 maintained mechanical harmony through naturally balanced primary and secondary forces. This fundamental engineering advantage allowed sustained high revolutions per minute operation that destroyed competitors through reliability rather than peak power. Racing teams discovered performance characteristics that specification sheets couldn't convey. The Hudson's torque delivery curve complemented NASCAR's racing demands perfectly, providing acceleration advantages from corner exits that accumulated into lap time superiority. The long-stroke inline-six generated usable power across broader revolutions per minute ranges than contemporary V8 seconds, reducing the precision required for gear selection and allowing drivers to maintain competitive speeds through varied track conditions. Professional drivers recognized handling superiority that extended beyond simple center of gravity advantages. The step-down design created a driving position that enhanced vehicle control, allowing more precise steering inputs and improved feedback through demanding racing conditions. Marshall Teague frequently commented on the Hudson's predictable behavior characteristics, noting that the car remained controllable at limit conditions where other vehicles became dangerous. The automotive industry's response revealed the depth of Hudson's technological achievement. Ford accelerated development programs to address their flathead V8's durability limitations, investing resources in metallurgy improvements and cooling system modifications. General Motors expanded Oldsmobile's racing support while intensifying overhead valve V8 development across their entire product line. Chrysler prioritized Hemi engine implementation, recognizing that advanced design concepts required immediate competitive deployment. Engineering departments throughout Detroit initiated crash programs to understand Hudson's competitive advantages. Analysis revealed that Hudson's success resulted from systematic optimization rather than revolutionary breakthroughs. The inline-six wasn't inherently superior to V8 designs, but Hudson had developed their engine architecture to exploit specific racing demands that competitors had ignored while pursuing theoretical performance advantages. Manufacturing implications extended beyond racing applications. Hudson's production techniques, developed to create the step-down chassis and balanced inline-six engines, demonstrated cost-effective approaches to precision manufacturing that influenced industry practices. Competitors recognized that Hudson had achieved superior results through careful engineering execution rather than expensive exotic materials or complex manufacturing processes. The January 14, 1954 merger between Nash Kelvinator and Hudson Motor Car Company to form American Motors Corporation marked the beginning of Hudson's competitive decline. Hudson's Detroit manufacturing facility was closed, and production of Hudson models was shifted to Nash's Wisconsin factory ending the step-down platform. The engineering integration that had enabled racing dominance was sacrificed for corporate efficiency and cost reduction. Hudson continued featuring only inline-six engines at a time when buyers were moving to V8 seconds offered by the competition, though the continuing dominance of Hudson's in NASCAR racing was sufficient to maintain some sales. However, the fundamental changes to manufacturing and engineering philosophy eliminated the technical advantages that had created racing superiority. The cultural impact transcended competitive statistics. Hudson had demonstrated that innovative engineering could overcome resource disadvantages, inspiring smaller manufacturers to challenge established automotive hierarchies. Racing fans developed appreciation for technical sophistication over raw power, changing spectator expectations about what constituted impressive performance. The Hudson victories proved that American ingenuity could triumph through intelligent application rather than brute force approaches. Media coverage patterns shifted permanently after Hudson's racing success. Automotive journalists began examining engineering fundamentals rather than simply reporting horsepower specifications. Racing reporters developed technical vocabulary to explain why balanced designs might outperform more powerful alternatives. The Hudson phenomenon forced sports media to educate audiences about chassis dynamics, weight distribution, and system integration concepts that had previously been ignored. Competitor recognition came through imitation and strategic changes. Ford's subsequent development of the Y-block V8 incorporated balance improvements inspired by Hudson's inline-six advantages. General Motors implemented chassis modifications across their product lines to achieve lower centers of gravity, similar to Hudson's step-down design. Chrysler's advanced Hemi development accelerated partly to match Hudson's demonstrated capability to extract maximum performance from fundamental engineering excellence. The legacy extended into popular culture through unexpected channels. The Hudson Hornet served as inspiration for Doc Hudson in the Disney Pixar classic Cars, introducing new generations to the story of engineering triumph over conventional wisdom. The character's backstory directly referenced Hudson's racing dominance, preserving the historical narrative for audiences who had never witnessed inline-six engines competing against V8 supremacy. Historical preservation efforts recognize Hudson's significance to American automotive development. A 1952 Hudson Hornet, prepared by legendary race mechanic Smokey Yunick and provided to NASCAR champion Herb Thomas, became part of museum collections that documented the evolution of American racing technology. These preserved vehicles serve as tangible evidence of engineering approaches that challenge industry orthodoxy and achieved remarkable success. The engineering principles that enabled Hudson's racing dominance influenced automotive development for decades after their competitive decline. Balance, system integration, and optimization of complete vehicle performance became standard approaches throughout the industry. Modern automotive engineering continues applying lessons learned from Hudson's demonstration that systematic development could overcome theoretical disadvantages through superior execution. Hudson's racing success established precedents that would influence American motorsport permanently. No longer would more cylinders automatically mean better performance. Engineering, sophistication, system integration, and development thoroughness became recognized factors in competitive success. The inline-six had proven that conventional wisdom about racing engine design contained fundamental flaws that careful analysis and superior execution could exploit. The empire began crumbling not through racing failure, but through corporate reality. Hudson's racing supremacy masked fundamental business vulnerabilities that success on the track could not overcome. While Hornets dominated NASCAR competition, Hudson Motor Car Company struggled against economic forces that rendered engineering excellence insufficient for survival in America's increasingly competitive automotive marketplace. The 1954 merger between Hudson and Nash Kelvinator Corporation to form American Motors Corporation marked the beginning of the end for Hudson's racing dynasty. Corporate efficiency demanded sacrifices that destroyed the technical integration that had enabled racing dominance. The step-down chassis design, crucial to Hudson's handling advantages, proved expensive to modify and difficult to integrate with Nash's existing manufacturing processes. Hudson's unit body construction made restyling difficult and expensive compared to the big three automakers, which could afford constant development and styling changes to keep their cars looking fresh every year. While Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler refreshed their product lines annually, Hudson's advanced engineering had become a liability in a marketplace that prioritized visual novelty over technical sophistication. The big Hudson still featured only inline-six engines at a time when buyers were moving to V8 seconds offered by the competition. racing success could not overcome consumer preferences that increasingly favored 8-cylinder engines, regardless of performance comparisons. The psychological appeal of V8 power transcended rational analysis, forcing Hudson to compete against cultural momentum rather than technical specifications. The automotive landscape shifted dramatically during Hudson's peak racing years. The end of the Korean War in 1953 started an economic boom, and car buyers immediately began seeking larger displacement engines and performance options. Hudson's inline-six philosophy, perfectly suited for racing competition, failed to match consumer expectations for modern automotive performance. Competitors responded to Hudson's racing dominance through accelerated development programs that would reshape American performance permanently. The 1955 Chrysler 300, powered by the legendary 331 cubic inch Hemi V8, represented Chrysler Corporation's direct answer to Hudson's racing success. This wasn't merely a new model introduction, but a declaration of war against inline-six supremacy. Featuring sophisticated engineering that combined V8 power with advanced chassis development, Ford's response came through the Y-block V8. Introduced for 1954 with overhead valve architecture that addressed the durability limitations exposed by Hudson's racing success. Ford engineers had studied Hudson's endurance advantages carefully, implementing design improvements that enhanced reliability while maintaining V8 performance characteristics. The Y-block represented Ford's commitment to matching Hudson's mechanical sophistication while providing 8-cylinder appeal. General Motors escalated the competition through multiple divisions simultaneously. Oldsmobile expanded their Rocket V8 development, introducing higher compression ratios and improved breathing that pushed power output beyond Hudson's capabilities. Chevrolet prepared their revolutionary small-block V8 for 1955 introduction, combining compact dimensions with advanced engineering that would dominate American performance for decades. Oldsmobile introduced the J2 Rocket V8 inches 1957 to help regain glory in the NASCAR series. Though the triple carburetor J2 power plant generated 300 horsepower and was outlawed by NASCAR before it could win championships, the extreme response demonstrated how seriously competitors took Hudson's challenge to V8 supremacy, developing engines specifically to reclaim racing dominance. NASCAR rule changes gradually eliminated Hudson's competitive advantages. Technical regulations evolved to favor newer engine designs while restricting modifications that had enabled Hudson's success. The twin H-Power system faced scrutiny from officials concerned about maintaining competitive balance, forcing Hudson teams to compete under increasingly restrictive conditions that negated their engineering advantages. Racing team support shifted toward manufacturers with greater resources and dealer networks. Ford and General Motors could provide financial backing that dwarfed Hudson's capabilities, attracting top drivers and mechanics to their racing programs. Independent teams found it increasingly difficult to obtain competitive Hudson equipment as the company reduced racing involvement to focus on corporate survival. The final racing seasons revealed Hudson's fundamental dilemma. Despite Hudson's racing success, marketplace competition and fierce rivalry between Ford and Chevrolet was too much to save the small-scale independent automaker. Racing victories could not generate sufficient revenue to sustain development programs that matched larger competitors' resources. Herb Thomas won his second championship cup in 1955 using a Chrysler automobile, symbolically marking the end of Hudson's championship era. The driver most associated with Hudson's success had abandoned the brand for competitive alternatives, demonstrating that even loyal supporters recognized the changing competitive landscape. By 1955, Hudson's NASCAR wins declined dramatically as competitors implemented lessons learned from studying Hudson's success. V8 engines incorporated balance improvements, chassis designs adopted lower centers of gravity, and manufacturing techniques emphasized the precision that had given Hudson competitive advantages. The industry had absorbed Hudson's innovations while maintaining 8-cylinder architecture that appealed to consumer preferences. The step-down design that had enabled Hudson's racing dominance became obsolete as competitors developed alternative approaches to achieving low center of gravity characteristics. General Motors' X-frame construction and Ford's advanced chassis engineering provided handling improvements without Hudson's manufacturing constraints, demonstrating that multiple solutions existed for racing performance challenges. The Hudson name was finally retired in 1957 as AMC transformed into Rambler. 3 years after the corporate merger, Hudson's identity disappeared entirely. absorbed into American Motors Corporation's strategy of focusing on compact car production rather than performance competition. The brand that had redefined American racing became a historical footnote in corporate consolidation. The engineering principles that enabled Hudson's success survived long after the brand's disappearance. Balance, system integration, and development thoroughness became standard approaches throughout the American automotive industry. Modern engine design continues applying lessons learned from Hudson's demonstration that systematic optimization could overcome theoretical disadvantages through superior execution. Racing technology evolution accelerated permanently after Hudson's challenge to conventional wisdom. No manufacturer could again assume that traditional approaches guaranteed competitive success. Innovation became essential for racing participation, forcing continuous development that benefited both competition and consumer vehicles. Hudson had established precedents that would influence American motorsport for generations. The summer heat of 1955 settled over NASCAR's racing circuits like a funeral shroud. Where Hudson Hornets once dominated starting grids, Chrysler 300s and Ford Thunderbirds now claim pole positions. The mathematical precision of V8 superiority had reasserted itself through corporate resources and technological advancement that overwhelmed Hudson's engineering elegance. But on quiet evenings at abandoned tracks across the South, mechanics still spoke in hushed tones about the sound. That deep, rhythmic growl of Hudson's 308 inline-six that had terrorized V8 competition for 4 extraordinary seasons. The audio signature of an engine that had refused to acknowledge its theoretical limitations and rewritten fundamental assumptions about American performance. In Daytona Beach, old-timers gathered at Smokey Yunick's garage to remember the impossible years when 6 cylinders had systematically humiliated 8. They recalled September afternoons when Herb Thomas would disappear into Turn 3 with a Hudson Hornet, while 39 V8-powered competitors struggled to maintain pace. Those memories carried the weight of revolution, when engineering sophistication had triumphed over conventional wisdom. The legacy lived not in trophies, gathering dust, or statistics printed in racing annuals, but in the persistent questions Hudson had forced upon American automotive development. Could balance overcome raw power? Did cylinder count determine racing supremacy? Were fundamental assumptions about performance engineering actually fundamental at all? Hudson had provided definitive answers that continued resonating decades after their corporate disappearance. Modern NASCAR garages echo with principles Hudson established during those dominating seasons. System integration, mechanical harmony, and development thoroughness became standard approaches that traced directly to lessons learned from studying Hudson's success. Every contemporary racing engine incorporates balance considerations that Hudson engineers pioneered, while their competitors pursued theoretical advantages through cylinder multiplication. The 308 inline-six had accomplished something unprecedented in American automotive history. For 4 seasons, it had systematically dominated competition using technology that industry experts dismissed as obsolete. Hudson had proven that innovative thinking could overcome resource disadvantages, that engineering excellence mattered more than corporate size, and that conventional wisdom often contained fundamental flaws invisible until challenged by superior execution. In museum displays across America, preserved Hudson Hornets sit silent beneath overhead lights, their hoods concealing the engines that once terrorized NASCAR's finest V8 seconds. Visitors read plaques describing racing statistics that seem impossible in retrospect. 81 victories is less than #0. 5 is greater than multiple championships. Systematic dominance by a straight-six engine during the dawn of V8 supremacy. Children press their faces against velvet ropes, trying to understand how these low-slung sedans could have outrun the muscle cars their fathers worshiped. The explanations require technical vocabulary that transcends simple horsepower comparisons. Balance, integration, optimization, development, thoroughness. Concepts that Hudson understood while competitors chased marketing headlines rather than racing victories. The Disney Pixar character Doc Hudson introduced new generations to this unlikely automotive hero, preserving the story of engineering triumph for audiences who would never witness inline-six engines competing against 8-cylinder opposition. The animated Hudson taught young viewers that wisdom could overcome youth, that experience mattered more than flash, and that true champions earned respect through consistent excellence rather than momentary brilliance. But fiction could not capture the visceral reality of Hudson's racing dominance. The smell of hot oil and high-octane gasoline mixing in southern summer heat, the vibration of perfectly balanced reciprocating components transmitted through steering wheels to drivers' hands, the sound of 39 V8 seconds straining to match the pace of one inline-six that seemed to run downhill even on flat straightaways. Racing photographers from those golden seasons preserved images that document automotive history's most unlikely revolution. Black and white photographs show Hudson Hornets leading fields of supposedly superior competition, their distinctive profiles unmistakable among contemporary vehicles. These visual records provide evidence that challenges modern assumptions about performance evolution and technological advancement. The technical specifications remain available in engineering archives and enthusiast literature for anyone seeking to understand how Hudson achieved the impossible. Bore and stroke measurements, compression ratios, carburation systems, and chassis dimensions that combined into automotive greatness. But specifications cannot convey the genius of integration that transformed individual components into championship-winning systems. Marshall Teague's unannounced visit to Hudson's Detroit headquarters had initiated a revolution that extended far beyond racing success. His intuition about inline-six potential, validated through systematic development and competitive testing, had challenged fundamental assumptions about automotive performance that influenced engineering thought for generations. The conversation that began in Hudson's corporate offices had rewritten the rules governing American motorsport. The rumble of Hudson's 308 inline-six engine faded from NASCAR competition by 1956, overwhelmed by corporate consolidation and technological advancement that rendered engineering elegance insufficient for continued success. But the questions Hudson had forced upon American automotive development persisted, challenging every subsequent generation of engineers to reconsider assumptions about performance, balance, and systematic optimization. On summer evenings when vintage racing events bring classic NASCAR vehicles to modern tracks, Hudson Hornets occasionally appear among the participants. Their distinctive exhaust notes stand out immediately among contemporary V8 seconds, that deep, rhythmic signature unmistakable to anyone who understands racing history. For brief moments, the impossible returns to life. The Hudson 308 inline-six had accomplished its historical mission completely. It had proven that conventional wisdom contained flaws, that innovation could overcome resource disadvantages, and that systematic engineering could triumph over theoretical superiority. Most importantly, it demonstrated that NASCAR's future would be shaped not by cylinder count alone, but by engineering excellence applied with relentless precision. The revolution was complete. The legacy lived on in every NASCAR garage, where balance and integration mattered more than raw horsepower. The sound would echo forever through the sport Hudson had helped define. Today, the survivors command prices that would make 1950s Hudson executives weep with vindication. An authentic 952 Hudson Hornet 6 NASCAR racer sold for $1,265,000, including buyer's premium at worldwide auctioneer's Hostetler Auto Museum sale in Shipshewana, Indiana. Much more than most contemporary Ferraris. Clean street Hornets with twin H-Power systems bring $75,000 to $150,000, while basket cases still command $25,000 for their legendary 308 inline-six alone. The engine that Detroit dismissed as obsolete now costs more to rebuild than most V8 seconds cost to complete. Specialty shops charge $15,000 for a proper 308 restoration, with twin H-Power systems adding another $5,000 in carburetor work alone. The step-down chassis that revolutionized handling remains so advanced that modern restorers study Hudson engineering drawings like sacred texts. Barrett-Jackson auctioneers call Hudson Hornets blue-chip collectibles that appreciate faster than traditional muscle cars. The irony cuts deep. Engines that couldn't sell new Hudsons in 1954 now fund retirement accounts for collectors smart enough to recognize engineering genius disguised as automotive history. Marshall Teague's original factory racer, if it still existed, would bring 7 figures from museums desperate to own the car that proved 6 cylinders could humiliate 8. The market has finally caught up to what Hudson engineers knew 70 years ago. True greatness transcends cylinder counts.